So for this discussion, talk about in a PR perspective, how or why do we need to think about our target audience? So in the video, it discussed like you want to, as a PR person, you want to be able to neutralize hostile opinions. So if you don't know your target audience, or you don't think about what your target audience wants to hear, you won't really be able to accomplish that. You won't be able to determine how you can neutralize those hostile opinions, because you don't know what your target audience wants to hear. And it also talks about, the video also talks about, the crystallizing latent opinions, and creating those positive attitudes. But not knowing who your target audience is, or what your target audience wants to know, you won't really, as a professional, you won't really have that idea of like how can you achieve those goals. And then it also talks about getting favorable opinions from the people. And that's basically getting favorable opinions from your target audience, because like mostly in a PR perspective, or in a marketing situation, like you would want your people or your publics to respond to you in a positive note. And knowing and understanding what your target audience wants, or who your target audience are, will help you achieve those goals. Also, the video talks about this, and well, in terms of the psychographics of the audience, that talks about fully on how you should be able to understand what your audience wants to know or hear. And uh, and just be able to understand them, because your target audience are your key to success, pretty much. Like they're the ones that you want to persuade to listen to you, and give you positive feedback. And you want them to be able to tell you that, oh yeah, this is great. Or you want them to change their opinion if they have a hostile opinion about what you're talking about. Then you want to be able to do that. And that's why you always have to think about your target audience. Also, the video also discussed this, where you have to understand the context, and make sure that the context of your messages that you're putting out actually applies to your target audience. Because you have to have the message that you're gonna put out, that kind of like Dr. Price was talking about in the video, is basically, why would your audience care? Or like, so what, why would I even want to read this, or why would I even want to listen to this? So it's like, if I'm a target audience, I want to know what does it do for me, or how does it help me, or what does it concern me with. So that's something that every PR professional should always think about, is knowing what your target audience wants to hear, and understanding that you have to make your messages apply to those target audience. For the second question, we talked about, the Dr. Price talks about the public opinion, and as why do they need to care about what public opinion is. And like, as PR professionals, public opinion, in the video we talked about how public opinion is pretty much creating that commonality of people, or interest within people, like that mutual interest, that a lot, or common interest that a lot of people have. And like, for example, pretty much the whole world have this mutual interest, or a common interest on COVID, because it's a pandemic. It affects the whole world. And pretty much your public opinion is what comes out of having to go through a pandemic like we are right now. So, as the video discussed, public opinions are very sensitive to situations that affects the public or the people. So, like, Dr. Price talked about it in the video, where she said that, earlier this year, people wouldn't have a public opinion about COVID, because it wasn't a pandemic yet, and it just started. And like, if it was like back in January, I wouldn't have a public opinion about COVID either, because I mean, it doesn't affect me at that point yet, until it became a pandemic. That was like, what, a few months after it just turned into a pandemic, and then COVID becomes a pet the becomes a that big public opinion that everybody talks about. So public opinion won't exist if it's not something that people want to talk about, or something that affects the people. So because public opinion is pretty much based on people's reaction to an event, a situation, or something that possibly will happen in the future, and we already know that it's maybe happening in the future, like some event like that. So in the video, public opinion talks about how public opinion actually shifts or changes through time. Because there are times, like I mentioned earlier, there are times that public opinion won't exist because there's really nothing going on. So in this term, in this time, now that when something is already happening or something is already affecting the people, then public opinion will start coming out, and there you will have people, or you will have people who will say something about what's going on. And then the theories that we talked about, it affects the people and it concerns the people. So now you'll have people actually saying something, and those are how public opinion actually matters to public relations, because that's when it affects the people, it affects your target audience. So now public opinion actually matters. So I'd say, yeah, when it comes to public opinion, every PR professional should know and understand what is the current public opinion about something, and that helps a public relations professional actually build their strategy and move forward with how they're gonna help the public, or how they're gonna change those mindsets, or how they're gonna persuade the people.